Happy Tuesday and welcome back, Heat Seekers. You are listening to the soothing sounds of a sick host, so I apologize if I do cough into the microphone. I'm glad you're here with us tonight, though. We are going to be talking about, and this is a Dynasty show, this is the Dynasty Heat Seekers, so we're going to be talking about Dynasty RBs, and actually, in particular, our top 10. And no, Craig, Breece Hall does not fit in this category because he's not in the NFL yet. We are talking about currently in the NFL, our top 10 Dynasty running backs. With that being said, Mr. Sullivan, how are you tonight, my friend?
I'm pretty good, Brad. I think I'm doing better than you are. And, like all true professionals, they play hurt, they play through it. And we appreciate you doing that and being with us tonight. Anthony, what's going on in Cali? How are you, man?
I'm doing great. Brad, your voice is so soothing tonight. It kind of reminds me of like a Barry White. I mean, if you could start, jamming out here to some 70. Yeah, here we go. Let's go.
We might have a 1-900 Roto Heat side business to go off.
Do like
a player
karaoke after the stream, like go live and do some karaoke. What do you think?
You're listening to the voice of Roto Feet.
Good Lord.
Somewhere Rick is crying.
Shaking in the corner.
Tony, welcome back, my friend. Glad to see you.
Hey, Tony, thanks for
as
being
always, post comments in the chat. We'll get to them after the main topic. With that being said, we wanted to talk about as we're at this point in the season, as you're getting ready for fantasy playoffs, because hopefully all your teams are successful because you've been with us and we work together to help make you successful. We want to talk about our top 10 dynasty running backs. We each have a few variations, and these could be guys that maybe you could target trades if you wanted to try to spend up for them, or in some of the case, spend for the younger players. These are just kind of food for thought for you. So with that being said, Mr. Sullivan, I think this was your topic. So how about you kick this thing off and get us going?
Yeah, I think Anthony and I sort of brainstormed and created this ourselves, and we'll see if we can keep the crowd and the chat at bay and happy and have a little discussions where we're at. So I'm not really sure how we want to tackle going through this. Leone, you got any thoughts?
I'm just thinking about singing some Sweet Caroline right now.
I haven't been.
I guess we
actually
can
see Neil Diamond in concert.
So, probably. I don't know, Sully. Maybe you just want to run through, like, let's say Brad's top 10, and then we can kind of dissect it from there.
I'm going to start with me.
Well, I'm going to start with Brad's, and I'm going to start at the bottom because Brad's got a couple of guys on his list at the bottom at 10 and 9, respectively, that neither one of us have. So Brad has Michael Carter at 10 and Javonte Williams at 9. So Brad,
nobody's excited about that.
4 words or less, because you're struggling there. Give us a little insight into those two former North Carolina running backs.
So when you came up with the show topic, we were talking. You were saying Dynasty top 10, and my first thought was looking forward, over the next few years, kind of who are the guys that are my top 10. And that's why, some of the guys fell on my list the way they fell. And Williams and Carter are two guys that I think have already started showing that they can be, I don't want to say the bell cow of their team, but be heavily involved in the offense. I mean, Carter we're seeing just as a PPR monster already, and he's only, 10 games into his career. Javonte's been a little bit slower. He's 50-50 sharing, but Melvin's looked fine this year. So both of these guys look good, have fit well on their teams, and I think have a very nice outlook going forward that I think is RB1 worthy. Maybe not this year for sure, but definitely within the next year or two after this year, we're going to be talking about them as really nice RB1 options because, look at the guys that we're going to have ahead of them. So many injury-prone guys that have been fighting through just heavy workloads and getting to the end of their really sexy value for fantasy. So I'm like, hey, let's go with some moonshots here. And these are my 2 moonshots. I love these guys.
I like it. So Anthony, I know you don't have these 2 in your top 10. Where would you have these 2?
I'd have Javonte Williams higher by several spots. So probably in the 15 to 20 range. If I just had to kind of guess off the top of my head, there's a few guys off my list that I kind of debated. Some of them are on your list. I would say of the guys that I have on my list that Brad doesn't have, and the guys that you have on your list that Brad doesn't have, all those guys, with the exception of maybe one guy, Javonte Williams would be higher than, but generally speaking, those guys would be higher than especially Michael Carter. I mean, look, I
Especially, you better
I-
back especially. Get out of here.
I get the appeal with Michael Carter, but he's not even really commanding touches right now. And
No, I think he is.
define
he is.
define touch then if he's not commanding touches.
well, because it depends on the game script. You know, if they're playing catch up, he's not even on the field for the most part.
Well, I don't think that's true because they're playing catch up from the opening kickoff most weeks, and he's still leading that team in carries and overall touches. Would I have Javonte Williams ahead of him? Absolutely. I would have him right where I think you have him, around 15, 16, 17, 18, somewhere in that range. And, Michael Carter, I like him. He's going to continue to grow, but I don't think the Jets are done putting that offense together. So it's kind of hard to speculate where he's going because that offensive line still needs some work in New York, and I think they'll improve it. But I also don't think they're going to go to bat with Michael Carter and a couple other guys going forward. I think they draft a running back of significance again next year. Maybe not, maybe a day 3 kind of guy, but I don't know. I like Michael Carter a lot, but he would probably be in my 20s, probably like 22-ish if I went that far.
Yeah, Michael Carter had less targets than Ty Johnson last week when they lost 45-17.
He did.
And
so
the
look
same
at the
thing
Bengals.
happened. And the same thing happened the week.
Game.
The same thing happened the week prior against the Colts.
Sure, but look at the Bengals game.
Okay.
And look at the season as a whole.
Let me go back to the Bengals game.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to spend this whole half hour talking about these 2 New York Jets running backs either. So while you're looking that up,
Carter's like the 3rd leading receiver on the team behind the top 2. I mean, the guy leads the team in rushing time. I mean, yes, based on each game, it could be a little different, but this is a rookie running back that we're seeing produce well, and especially in the situation that he's in, and the fact that, if you were listening to me preseason, I was talking this guy up, and he was a 2nd-round pick in most people's drafts and is outperforming some of the 1st-round players pretty easily at this point, and looks good going forward. I mean, he's a guy that I think needs to be in consideration. Now, is he top 10 currently? No. I mean, if this was current Dynasty top 10s, he would not be top 10. No. I'm saying my look is an outlook over the next few seasons. These are my top 10 running backs in fantasy over the next few years.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's fair. I kind of had a different approach. But I agree with your list in general. I can see the argument for Javonte Williams in the top 10. It's just a little too soon for Michael Carter for me. That's all.
Okay. So looking at these lists again, Brad, all of us have Jonathan Taylor at 1. And I think that's sort of a unanimous thought. I don't think any of us really have to add much to that. Anybody who's paid attention to JT over his year and a half would probably understand that ranking. Next at number 2, it's Najee for Brad and I, and it's CMC for you, Anthony. Why McCaffrey still that high in your rankings?
Well, I just think he's a stud, and even with an injury kind of lingering, he still put up 25 points last week. He was like the 2nd highest scoring running back.
Yeah, I think it was 26.1. I believe was his total last week.
I don't see him slowing down. I think he's going to maintain that value. Catching the ball in the backfield. Some of these other guys we're going to be talking about. Let's just use, because Aaron Jones is not on any of our lists. Let's just use Aaron Jones as an example. Yeah, he doesn't fit that same profile as Aaron Jones, for example. Even if he gets an injury, he can come back. He can retain value as a pass catcher. He's dynamic. And so even if he doesn't lead a backfield in the latter part of his career, I still think he's going to be fantasy relevant. So he's going to maintain a lot of value, even in the later stage of his career. And he's not even, I mean, you could argue he's just now in his prime. How many more years does Christian McCaffrey have to go in his prime?
2.
I would argue longer.
Why? You're so concerned about wide receivers' age. Why aren't you concerned about a 26, 27, 28-year-old running back?
Position scarcity. I think
sticking with that position then, so you would trade today, you would trade CMC, you would trade Najee Harris for Christian McCaffrey, straight up.
Depending on the situation, I would.
That's how you ranked it. So that's how you.
Well, I ranked, but rankings don't determine team structure. So you can't just look at a ranking.
So
and
all
make
things
a
equal,
decision.
all things equal in a vacuum,
If
you would
I
trade
was if I
Harris
was
for McCaffrey.
rebuilding, if I was a
Forget
rebuilding
it.
roster,
Moving on. If you're going to rank a guy ahead of another guy, then you would make that trade. But
no, that's not. I think that's very poor advice.
I think the interesting thing about Christian McCaffrey, I think recency bias is helping him in this case. I mean, you got to think about it. This year and last year, he's played 8 games combined. He's never had more than 287 touches in a season. Obviously targets puts him over 400 if you do it total. The injury prone label, when do we start applying that to a guy who has missed as much time as this guy? I love him. I think he's a really dynamic running back when he's on the field, but what's going on here? Like, why do we keep seeing him miss time? I mean, you can't trust somebody like that can't stay healthy, right?
Well, I don't think anyone's injury prone, and I think they all are at the same time, right? Like this is a sport where a running back can drop dead and any carry and his career could be over in a heartbeat. So I've never really structured and built my teams around concerns of injury. I added a ton of Dalvin Cook and Leonard Fournette a couple of years ago when everybody was concerned that they couldn't stay on the field, and it served me well. But I think that the 400 touches is legit, right? And when you look at historical data, and it's something that I like to do, the way those things play out down the road means something. And Christian McCaffrey is the best running back in football. There's no doubt about it. From a fantasy perspective, what's really interesting about him is he's an RB1 and a wide receiver 2 built in one, right? Like he's a cheat code, but he doesn't do you any good if he's not on the field. So you have to bake that into your rankings. I baked it into mine. I built this off of what I see 3 years out. That's always how I've always done dynasty rankings. And unlike Anthony, if I think a player is better than another player, then I'll rank him ahead of him. I won't rank him ahead of him only under certain situation. Like, people look to rankings for some clarity as to who they're going to pick. Now, would I have these guys in the same tier? Maybe, but I have McCaffrey. Where the hell do I even have him? I have him at 4. So I'm not that far off. Brad, you have him at 6. So you're the lowest on him. And I think your concern is probably the injury most of anything, correct?
Probably. Yeah, would be my guess. I mean, when I was looking at the guys that I had, the 5 I have ahead of them, in a vacuum, I was willing to trade CMC straight up for any of those. So that's how I put those guys ahead of them. Like, it didn't matter to me. I like that other player better. So
you have Alvin Kamara at 5. You would take Kamara over CMC right now, all things being equal?
Absolutely.
I'm not sure I'm there with you on that one, but I see it.
You do see it because I have it that way.
That's right.
You know what? So CMC being on the field, CMC is arguably better than the 5 guys I have ahead of him. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not building my team around a guy who's played 8 games over 2 seasons. Like, when I have them very similar, I would just rather take the guy I feel is going to be on the field more and just as productive. I mean, Kamara's very similar, a cheat code, right? Yeah. Kamara is currently hurt this 2 weeks, but certainly been healthy for most of his career. So when he's been the focal point of his offense for how many years now,
Awesome. So at 1, we all have JT. At 2, you have, and I have Harris. Anthony has CMC. At 3, it's Swift for you and I, and Najee for Anthony. I think that's pretty understandable. I think there's, if Harris isn't 2, he's 3. If some people might argue that Harris could be 1. We'll see what it looks like this time next year.
And to be honest, if I don't want to change my rankings midstream, but you guys are kind of convincing me. Maybe if I'm putting myself a year ahead, I'm being honest. I mean, if I put myself a year ahead, would I draft in a startup Najee or CMC?
I think you would go with Najee, wouldn't you?
I might. And so it's kind of hard for me to do that. It's hard. It honestly, it's hard for me in the middle of a season, week 10, 11, to try to like suspend belief and pretend we're in the future. It's difficult for me to do that for something and especially when you're really splicing hairs here.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to say, hey, I mean, you look at our all of our top 7 guys are the same. Like we can do that, but when you start really getting down to the nitty gritty, trying to look ahead in the future, splicing these hairs, it's really difficult because there's so many different things that can change from now until then.
Right.
So it's a fun experiment. It's always good to evaluate and try to think ahead. It's not easy.
Well, and
It's
some
not.
of it is how do you want to build your team? So when you're drafting, if you're looking at not necessarily trying to compete immediately, but wanting to just set yourself up for being successful. A lot of guys will say, well, you start with drafting wide receivers early, and some of these running backs just won't be available because others will jump on them quickly. I mean, so you have to.
And I draft when I do draft, I draft for what I think is the perceived value. And a lot of people disagree with this. That's fine. You do you. I draft at perceived value. So I'll take. Yeah.
I love it. You're doing the hands.
Well, what am I drafting? What am I
I'll
drafting?
take Fantasy Pros. I love Fantasy Pros because it shows you what people are thinking, even if it's wrong. Now, if I
So you're going to draft wrong? Is that what you're saying?
Sometimes I will. If I think
where's Rick at? We got to get him on here. This would be hilarious.
If I think the perceived value of a player is going to potentially get me more on a trade, even if I don't like the player, I'll still take the perceived value. So in your example, Brad, you're muted.
Don't worry, I wasn't saying anything. I'm amazed.
In your example, if your example with Michael Carter, let's say Michael Carter is available to you, and all these guys that we have ranked are there. There's no way, even if I thought for sure Michael Carter was going to be a top 10, I would not take him in that spot because of the perceived value. Taking someone else, I'll trade them to someone else and then get the guy I want. And then you just keep attaining value like that.
So you're basically saying you draft off of your rankings and no one else's.
No, I draft off of perceived value.
So he drafts off of everyone else's value of players.
So if I perceive a $20 bill to be more valuable than a 10, then I should rank the 20 higher than the 10, correct?
Yeah.
So your rankings then, because perceived value is just me taking a look at a list of players and listing who I think is the most valuable.
If I thought that you and Brad both thought, I'm trying to use an example.
Oh, so you're saying you draft guys that you think you can trade for more than drafting guys you want to keep?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I use my own perceived value of what other people perceive as value, as my value.
That's a lot of thinking going on.
Yeah,
So you're trying to think what everyone else is going to do.
I just draft the best player available. That's all I do.
Yeah.
I'll worry about my trades and values.
Now I have to like, if I don't take someone if I don't like them or if I think they're a dog. Like I'll leave them aside. There's enough players where I don't have to roster those guys.
I don't think we're doing that in the first 6 to 8 to 10 rounds anyway, right? Like usually the guys that you get in those rounds are players that you can see being in your lineup from a week-to-week basis.
That's right.
So Anthony, Ezekiel Elliott is 9 and Joe Mixon is 10 for you, and you're the only one with those two on your list. So I'm curious as to what you're seeing in those guys going forward.
Yeah, I think if I could flip them, I wouldn't right now. It doesn't make any difference. I would have.
Sure.
Thinking more about it with Mixon being a year younger, I would have him higher. Just thinking about it again, I'm trying to think a year ahead now. So that was something that came to mind. But I do think that they should be considered as top 10. Even next year, they're going to be 26, 27, 20 respectively. I don't know the exact
Zeke will be 27 and Mixon will be 26.
Mixon's a year younger, right? Yeah. So I expect them both to be elite for 3 seasons. I look ahead in Dynasty as, 3 years out. Both are on exceptional offenses. They're going to be with their teams a long time. The teams are offensive firehouse. I mean, they're just lead running backs on their teams. They're going to get the ball, and they produce week in and week out a high floor. Mixon's on his way to his 3rd 1,000-yard season this year. He's through 9 games. He already has as many touchdowns in his career. So he's having arguably the best season of his career. And he's 25 years old. So it's not hard to say, hey, I think he's going to be even better next year. Adrian Peterson showed you can do that even, 5, 6, 7 years into their career. Boom, 2,000-yard season.
Definitely outliers in there for sure. I don't think Joe Mixon has a 2,000-yard season in his future. I just don't think he touches the ball enough in that offense. But I don't think Joe Mixon inside of a top 10 dynasty rankings is egregious. Like, I don't think it's outrageous. He'd probably be around 15, 16 for me, but like you said, we're splitting hairs on a lot of these guys anyway. Brad, what do you see for Zeke and Mixon going forward?
Zeke is the one that I'll be interested to see. Sorry, I'll be interested to see what the identity of this team really is. Like, so
Yeah,
they want to be an offensive juggernaut, but then all of a sudden they just kind of do crazy things. I think Pollard is proving this year that he can be relied on a little bit more. So I think he cuts into that workload a little bit, and that's why I had Elliott just outside of my top 10.
yeah.
I'd probably have him somewhere around the, somewhere to 10 to 12, 14 range.
If we did top 12, Zeke would be on my list.
Yeah, he's probably in there. Mixon, I really like as well. I don't really have any issues with Mixon. I think both of these guys, at least for the next 2 years, can be very fantasy relevant. After that, that's when I'm like, okay, Zeke, I can see, maybe disappearing quickly depending on what they want to do with his contract. Mixon, who knows what this offense really looks like in a couple years. So that's what that kept them both off my top 10. But I like both players. I was a big Mixon guy preseason.
Me too.
Traded all my shares just because people were paying crazy moonshot type prices to get them. So I guess in my mind, they're both, sell high candidates. If you think, 2 years is about all they've got left. If you think they've got more than 2 years, then this is the time to, to sit on your shares. What do you think?
Cool. Yeah. Like I said, if we did a top 12, Zeke would be in it. Mixon would be outside of it for me, probably around 15, 16. Something about that offense and him in general. He's very talented and he gets a decent amount of touches. It's just,
you don't have Mixon in top 12? Top 12?
No, I wouldn't.
Brad, do you have Mixon top 12?
It'd be, I'd have to look. It'd be tough.
Okay, wait, let me,
right around there.
25.
He would come in around, I haven't done out more than 10, but knowing what I know off the top of my head, he'd probably be in between 12 and 15.
He's currently 25.
Yeah.
He's on pace. You know what? Let me say it for the people in the back. Is this thing on? 20. He's 25.
Mm-hmm.
He's on pace for the best year in his career. He already, through 9 games, has 9 touchdowns. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's proving this year he's a 3-down back on the field all the time. You look at that offense: Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Higgins, Tyler Boyd. They are just rocking and rolling. And to get a lead back at such a young age in his prime, to have him that low, I think is.
So, Anthony, what's the difference between a running back 12 and a running back 14 in scoring on average over the last 10 seasons?
On this show, it's very important. And it's a
what's the difference between a top 12 and a top 14 scoring running back and PPR scoring over the last 10 seasons on average?
Oh, probably 10 points.
Right. Maybe 15, maybe 20.
Yeah.
Maybe 1.8 to 2 points per game. So I don't think having Mixon at 14 is reason to lose.
Blasphemy.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll wrap this running back thing up pretty quickly here. There's 3 guys on my list that you guys don't have. I have Austin Eckler, I have J.K. Dobbins, and I have Cam Akers, and they are at 8, 9, and 10 respectively. I think obviously we rank on PPR scoring, so I think Eckler belongs up here because I think he is one of those exceptions to the rule where he can get even better. He is a little bit older. He's 26 years old, but he's not going anywhere in that offense. If anything, his passing role should increase as this season goes on, and I think he solidifies himself there. And then I'm sort of taking a shot with the 2 guys that are injured that are coming back. I think, preseason this year, Dobbins was arguably a top 5 to 7 Dynasty ranked running back, and the world was pretty gaga for Cam Akers as well. Seeing what Akers is doing in his rehab and talk about him coming back for the playoffs, and now there's talk he's going to come back potentially before that if he could, is pretty remarkable to me. And when I watch Henderson in the Rams offense, he produces. When I watch any running back that is given work in that Sean McVay offense, they produce. Todd Gurley did. CJ Anderson did. Malcolm Brown, or whatever the hell his name is, for a couple of weeks last year did. Akers did when he got the chance, right? So I like those 3 guys at the back end of my top 12. But again, if they slid to anywhere from 15 to 18 or 15 to 17 or so, it wouldn't be surprising. Thoughts on those guys?
I don't see how you could put Akers and Dobbins in the top 10. I mean, if you're doing a startup next year, there's no chance you would be taking them above any of these guys we already talked about, right?
I would. Actually, I wouldn't. Actually, I wouldn't, because when these guys come off the board, I'm drafting wide receivers. But if I had to draft a running back, there was a gun to my head, I would take them where I have them.
Yeah, I can't agree with that. I mean, even earlier when you're dogging on CMC not being available, I mean, and then you stick Akers and Dobbins in the top 10. Like, to me, it just doesn't.
Yeah, but they're behind. I wouldn't take them ahead of McCaffrey.
No, but the argument of not having CMC ranked so high is that he's off the field, and then you go and stick Akers and Dobbins in the top 10. Like, it doesn't.
So Akers ruptured his Achilles, and Dobbins tore his ACL.
Right, and they're not playing all season.
Right, and McCaffrey missed almost all of last season and a big chunk of this season, and he has 400 touches on his resume. There's a huge difference when you're looking at those three players.
Let's just gloss over the fact that Sullivan's playing in leagues where guns are to heads. All right, I don't want to be in those leagues. I don't want to be any part of that Russian mafia.
It's tough up here in Canada.
Guns to your head. I can't hate on these guys. Like when Dobbins and Akers were coming out, we were considering these guys. I mean, kind of the best of the best. Dobbins terrifies me just because Baltimore. I mean, Baltimore.
Yep, that's valid.
Pick a running back and go with them. But man, I love Dobbins' talent. I love Akers' talent. I think both of them are very worthy to be in this conversation. Eckler's the one that always seems to get overlooked by everybody, and he just produces. I mean, he's always been a productive guy, and I don't hate having him in there, but he's just a guy that I've never. In one league, I had drafted him. Other than that, I've never owned another Eckler share, and it's just because either the price tag's been too high, or I just let somebody else go after him. And
I think we all have those guys.
So good.
Right?
Yeah, he's so good.
I'd love to have some DeAndre Swift. I don't have any. Like, I just don't. And for whatever reason, right? Like, any of these guys, and you can rank down to 30 in running backs, and I'd be happy to have any of them on my roster, to be totally honest with you. But I just looked at, Eckler. I just love the pass catching upside, and just whenever he's on the field, he's there. And he's missed time too. Mm-hmm. Most running backs have. Mm-hmm. And then when I look at those two sophomores, preseason, before they were injured, they were top 8 Dynasty ranked industry wide. So I'm not dinging them too much for taking a year off. But
looks like
I understand why people.
You haven't dinged them at all.
Sure, I did.
They're not top 5, right? Because
these aren't redraft rankings; these are dynasty rankings. Yeah. There's a reason why they're on my list. So
the one name on all of our lists that we haven't talked about, I think the only one left, Barkley. Like, what do we do with Barkley? That guy just can't stay on the field. I mean, it feels like he's never been on the field, but he's so good when he is, right?
It's so hard to figure out. I don't really know. Like, where we all got him at, like 4, 5, 6 or something like that.
No, I got him at 8. Yeah,
Anthony's at 6, and I'm at 7. So we're all over we're pretty much in the same spot. I don't know.
I mean, even this week, I have a contending team where I'm like, man, I really would love to start him now that he's coming back from injury. I just don't trust that he's going to stay on the field this week.
Well,
yeah, it's a tough matchup too, isn't it? They got Tampa Bay.
Well, I mean, they lost to Washington, so who knows what they are. I mean, each week you never know what you're getting out of football anymore.
Again, I think it comes down to what type of injury are these guys sustaining, right? Like it reminds me of Keenan Allen rupturing a spleen and getting an injury-prone label slapped on him. It's like he ruptured his freaking spleen.
Right.
Barkley stepped on somebody's foot. It was the freakest, worst end-of-play thing ever. And just because he's, torn his ACL the year before and missed some time and all this other stuff, it magnifies, right? Things happen. The reality is the more you get injured, the more likely you are to get injured. So there is theory behind the injury-prone stuff, but I think Barkley's more luck-deprived than anything else, So I don't know if I would start him this week either, though. I really don't. But as far as like looking ahead down the road, there's a lot to be said for the missed time being a blessing in terms of wear and tear on the body. So if he can get his ankles back on, he's had a high ankle sprain, now a low ankle sprain and a torn ACL. Hopefully he can stay somewhat healthy and that offense can become somewhat viable, because that offensive line is horrific. So even a healthy running back there doesn't do me too much good. But on the other side, you look at what Booker did there, and Barkley's 10 times the back that Booker is. So,
well, the nice thing is he's been in the league for 4 years now, and he will be out of New York hopefully soon because his rookie deal will be up. But when the thing that hits me with him is he's only 24, going on 25, I think maybe.
Yeah, he's young.
I mean, he's still super young, and he was a guy that all offseason I kept targeting. I think I never drafted him because I never had a pick high enough to get him when he came out. But now
Yeah,
I have
me
like
too.
4 or 5 shares of him just because he's the one I kept targeting all off season.
Barkley's only 1 year older than Najee Harris. Figure that out.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
The
yeah,
one guy
That is cool.
The one guy I wanted to talk about that we
Yeah.
all omitted that I think, it's understandable, but it's Antonio Gibson. 23-year-old, really good out of the backfield, has shown this year he can run between the tackles pretty well.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have him top 10, but I would have him over Javonte Williams. I'd have him over Michael Carter.
No.
Carter, I might.
I'd have him over Akers.
No.
And I'd have him over Dobbins.
Not a chance.
This is a Sully special, probably somewhere in the 14 to 16 range. Like that's a high end RB2 in my mind. Like
he's an RB2. I agree.
Until he can't get JD McKissick out of there, right? Like where's all those? Why is JD McKissick still a thing if Antonio Gibson's so good?
I'm as guilty as the next guy for getting glossy eyed when it came to Antonio Gibson and had him ranked pretty high coming into this season. I was wrong. I just overestimated the talent and who he was. Still, guy's still learning. Jay Wall, the guy's still learning the position. I think we forget that too, right? So to not have Antonio Gibson in my top 12, I don't think any of us are saying he's not a talented running back. I think he is, but I don't think he's top 10, top 12 guy yet. Could easily be in his career. Easily.
I would have Gibson and Eckler to round out my top 12. Just those are two of the guys I was kind of debating adding in there.
So there's one other guy that nobody talked about, and that's Derrick Henry. Where's Derrick Henry going to be for you guys? He almost made my list, and I thought to myself, there's no way in hell I can go on here and have that guy on my list after all the stuff that I've been talking about. But he was real close to making that list.
So this will fall down like we were talking about before. If we're doing a startup and I go on Fantasy Pros and Dynasty Startup has him as like the 10th best running back, and there's a lot of Derrick Henry buzz. No. That's the perfect example of a guy that I would take above a lot of these guys we're talking about just for that value. And then after, boom, 300-yard, 3-touchdown game, then I'll trade him and I'll get 2 of these guys we're talking about for just the price of 1.
Maybe in redraft, but you won't Dynasty.
Man, I'll be in these leagues Anthony's in where it's just
if the Dynasty.
You're not going to draft Derrick Henry in a startup and then trade him for Akers and Dobbins.
I think in many leagues you could trade Derrick Henry right now for Akers and Dobbins today.
Well, trust me, I spent a week and a half trying to trade Derrick Henry, and trust me, those deals aren't out there.
Well, I traded an injured Derrick Henry for Chris Godwin straight up.
Yeah, and you know what I traded him for? And I tried trading an injured Derrick Henry for an injured Cam Akers straight up, and the owner wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I can't. I don't get that myself. I mean, I would do that
because that owner's smart long term.
Yeah, I just think I play Dynasty 2 to 3 years out. I certainly try to win every year that I'm playing. I don't mean that I don't, but I try to play it 2 to 3 years out, and I can't imagine what Derrick Henry looks like in the back half of next year, let alone 2 years from now.
He's a fullback after that, right?
Could be, and could be
a really good one.
Could score 28. He could score 28 touchdowns and rush for 48 yards, right?
Yeah,
who knows? Cool. Anyway, I don't know if we did a very good job of displaying our top 10s, but that's kind of all I got on that. So,
yeah, just to round out the Henry part for me, like I've just never been a huge Henry guy. I had a couple shares, traded them all last off season. About the time, probably just before Sully started talking about selling them, because then I felt better that I had sold them because somebody else agreed that what I was thinking was reality.
Yeah,
I mean, a guy that just takes that physical a beating at the running back position, ooh, that always makes me think that window gets smaller when you get hit as much as he does, and he's hurt now.
It really is amazing to me, though, a guy that takes that much punishment on a weekly basis ends up hurting himself on the freakest of injuries, right? Breaks a little bone in his foot instead of, shoulder or back or something from just getting wailed on 380 times a year. So,
and we'll see when it comes back. To bring up, if you can bring up Snead's comment again. Right now, I agree he wouldn't, but next year, 2022, if he's healthy and running strong, I think he could. It depends on the situation with Javonte and who else is in that backfield. But
I don't think there will be anybody else. I think that's what makes
that. By then,
that's the problem.
I think that's what makes that deal unrealistic. Is Williams is going to own that backfield.
Yeah,
very soon. As soon as the Broncos are out of the playoff picture, he's going to own that backfield. So we'll see what it looks like. And honestly, that's my only concern with him. I've never seen him own a backfield before. I don't know if he can.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes for him. But I would think that the body is in better shape to handle that because he hasn't had to. I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. But I would almost prefer him to have a running mate that gets some of that load off, so that because we're seeing it all the time now. Teams can have multiple running backs, all be very fantasy relevant. I mean, most of us are able to play multiple running backs from the same team if need be. So I don't hate it if Denver gets another.
The bell cow's dead. Like, if we're going to be honest about it, I think there's maybe 4 or 5 in the league, and as soon as those guys move on, it's probably might be one. Like Najee might be the only one, and if anybody's going to drop dead from punishment, it could be that poor kid. They're getting him killed this year. So
yeah, he's being hit a lot. But for fantasy, I think isn't it better for fantasy where there's multiple running backs that can have value, because then it helps the parity of the fantasy leagues, because you have other teams that can have 2 running backs, right?
Well, it's week 11, and you and I do a waiver wire video, and I can't remember who the running backs we had. We had Deonta Foreman and Devonta Freeman as our quote unquote must add running backs. That speaks a lot to the position in week 11, when those are the 2 guys that we're looking to add off of our waiver wires. I almost threw up after we made that video.
Oh, I've wanted Deonta to be a thing for so long, because I drafted him and I was a big fan of him coming out of Texas, and the injury bug and all that really messed with him. I would be excited to see him really go off the rest of the season, because I think he could. I mean, I know Cody and I talked about it last week's show, but I'm a fan of him. I think he could do well in that offense.
Easily the best running back on that roster right now. So, and it's a tough injury to come back for. And watching him is one of the reasons why I felt comfortable moving Akers to where I did in my rankings, because it's the same injury. And when Akers first went down, I thought he was finished, right? I didn't think he was any way he could come back from that. But watching CJ Uzomah come back from that, watching Deonta Foreman come back from that, some NBA guys coming back from an injury, it's not what it used to be. So I'm not that worried, but
sports medicine has gotten way better over the years.
Totally. It used to be done when you tore your ACL. Now,
right.
It's like a part-time thing.
Yeah. Poor Stabs. I'm feeling for him, brother. It's not easy to make trades when everyone values the young players so much more. And don't sell your team short. If you can't move the guy for your price, don't move him. I mean, it sucks, holding on to a guy that's hurt, but
just win with who you got then. Like, if everybody wants a 21-year-old back, then just keep those guys and go crazy.
A lot of times it just depends on your league too.
Right.
I mean, I've seen, some leagues are way more trade friendly than other ones. So when I talked about the perceived value before, if I know the guys, if I know they trade, then I'm way more inclined to do something like that.
Right. So there you go.
Some questions there, boss.
Let's get some questions going. All right. So over on Facebook, I had Aaron Jones go down and Cordero Patterson get hurt also. Is Pollard an okay plug and play for a couple weeks?
Okay. I had the same exact thing happen in my redraft league.
Is this you posting on Facebook?
It could very, very well be me. Yes. And if I had Pollard, I'd be feeling pretty good about it, to be honest. I don't have Pollard. I have
going against Kansas City this week. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Instead, I have CEH, Miles Sanders, and like everyone, Kareem Hunt. Like all of my running backs are now hurt. It's like, oh my god. So yeah, I mean, is Pollard an okay? Yeah, he's okay. Can you find anything better on the waiver wire? Probably not. Not really.
At this point in the season.
I mean, you'd be trying to add Deonta Foreman comes to mind. That's who I put one of my claims in this week.
Freeman and Foreman would both. I think of those guys that we mentioned, I think they might be better. I know Freeman would be a better play than Pollard because he's the lead running back in Baltimore right now.
And there's one less one there now too.
Yeah, with Lev being gone. So Foreman, on the other hand, I would probably play Pollard over Foreman, but definitely roster Foreman.
And I don't know what league this is in, Facebook user. If you have IR spots, Cordero Patterson is not listed as out or IR or anything yet, which is really frustrating because you can't move into an IR spot. So
Nope.
rather than dropping a Tim Patrick or a Mike Williams or someone at the end of your bench, drop your kicker.
Mike Williams.
It was a joke.
Bench.
It was a joke. Drop your kicker for one of these guys. Then when Cordero Patterson gets the out designation, you can
Can't
stick
do
him on
that
IR
this week.
At that time.
You can't do that this week because A, he plays on Thursday, and B, he's not going on IR because he practiced today.
No, but
chance he plays.
Yeah, well, that's true too if he plays. But assuming he doesn't play on a short week, if he gets the out designation on Yahoo, he'll be IR eligible.
Yahoo.
All right. Well, sure. I don't know what every format out there is. I'm just
ESPN
saying
also allows that.
Okay, well, this is a Dynasty show, so maybe tomorrow night we can talk about Yahoo and ESPN's injury designations.
I'm trying to help out Mr. Facebook user.
Mr.
Okay?
Facebook
All right.
user.
So the answer to the question is yes, Tony Pollard is an okay plug and play for a couple of weeks based on where we're at in the season and what's out on their waiver wire, whether you're in redraft or Dynasty. It is slim pickings, so absolutely he's a good plug and play. He could get 10 to 12 touches against KC.
Easily. I did pop this up while we were in the midst of the conversation.
Yeah, I saw it.
But who's the bigger injury risk, CMC or Aaron Jones? I think it has to be CMC, right?
I think they both are.
Although, based on Sully's earlier conversation, everybody and nobody.
So I believe Aaron Jones, this is the fourth time he's sprained his MCL. So that's somewhat concerning, obviously. CMC's had some soft tissue stuff. I'd be more worried with the soft tissue than I would be with the ligament damage, but at the same time, neither one of them are very exciting. Bigger injury risk, probably for reoccurrence, it's McCaffrey, but I don't know. I think you're splitting hairs.
I think it's pretty even, but I mean, you got to have CMC higher just because he's 2 years younger.
Well, and he's a better football player too. There's that.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. All right, welcome back, Dribble God.
Hang on a second. Back up the bus. You trying to say that Aaron Jones is as good as Christian McCaffrey?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, okay, good. Carry on, please.
I just make noises at y'all because y'all remember. Dribble God, welcome back, my friend. Traded James Robinson and Mark Andrews for Travis Kelce.
Great job.
Unless it's Dynasty. If it's Dynasty, I don't
love it. Still love
that. No.
Yeah, I don't have any issues.
I have no problem with it.
I mean,
no problem with that because it just says you're going for it this year, and I like that. Good for you.
Remember,
I just don't think the drop off from Kelce to Mark Andrews is that big.
Yeah, some would argue there's no drop off at all at this point right now. But
so then why give away James Robinson for arguably nothing? I mean, that's why.
The way I look at it is obviously you have the running back depth where you can move James Robinson. You have upgraded to the best tight end in fantasy football, whether it's a big gap or not. And if you're trying to win a championship this season, good for you. Go win it. And when you win it this year, no one will care about James Robinson. Maybe James Robinson will, and his brother who watches our YouTube, or his cousin. Sorry, watches their YouTube.
Yeah. So the same Facebook user, whatever conversation you were having with them, Sullivan, it did not go.
That guy in my league declined the trade. I went over with you, Sully. That is why. Oh, it's Castile.
Because it was probably a really unfair trade Sully wanted to pull. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You should.
Who uses Yahoo?
hit me up with
Discord.
Hit me up with your options.
Discord.
Castile, send me a direct message the way you did with the previous ones, and we'll continue to talk, my friend.
I'm about to say we get so many different DMs from people and our different platforms that yes, Discord is the best place to get a very big consensus. But if you enjoy talking to one of us specifically, you can always slide into the DMs.
And Twitter's there, and everything else is there. Facebook's there. We're everywhere.
Right. All right. Dynasty. I'm 2-7 because of injuries. Should I just hold and see how the beginning of next year looks? I have Josh Allen, Barkley, Hunt, Gibson, Akers, Rojo, Hines, and Miss at RB.
Probably Zach Moss.
Oh yeah. The O is still trying to catch up. But my wide receivers are weak. Ridley, Anderson, Smith, Traquan, Nicole, Campbell, Rieger, Hamler, and Amon-Ra. Well, I wouldn't say they're weak. I would say Amon-Ra is elite.
That's
awesome.
No. Come
You
on.
got a fever now, hey?
I do.
Is your wife home?
I need some more Amon Ra.
Lay off the NyQuil.
You need your NyQuil.
love me some Amon Ra. That guy will be a PPR dynamo in the years to come once I get rid of Goff. On my rookie bench, tight ends, I have Waller. Not, yeah, I wouldn't be in any hurry because you can fix next year's draft class of wide receivers. There's some really sexy wide receivers coming out in next year's class. Not to mention, just think about Treylon Burks, Chris Olave. You got Garrett Wilson. I mean, you have all these really good wide receivers that will probably be coming out. So I would definitely, at least me personally, I would not be in any hurry to trade anybody.
I would be looking to trade one of your tight ends, assuming it's a one tight end league. Waller, Knox, get a young, good wide receiver that you think is going to be good for a long time. Earlier this year, you could have traded Waller for Jamar Chase straight up. So I still think you can get a really good young wide receiver with upside that will help you for a long time.
I think go ahead.
You can also do the same thing with Josh Allen if it's a 1 QB league. You don't need a top quarterback to compete in 1 QB leagues. And if you have a guy who is just missing a quarterback, you can trade Allen and get a really nice return if a team is in need of a quarterback. So, we just talked about Barkley and Gibson and these guys that, retain a lot of value, but aren't really doing you anything right now. So I would, I would be willing to look for some trade offers. I wouldn't, like to Brad's point, I wouldn't be in a hurry, go out and just sling guys and kind of do things, like, I don't know if you guys play chess. It's called pushing wood. It means like moving without really thinking about what you're doing. You're just kind of moving your chess pieces around.
Moving without thinking. Moving without thinking by Anthony Leone.
Yeah.
Hey, so just trade yourself into good decisions. All right.
Don't push wood.
Listen. All right, guys.
Take your time.
Enough. Man, you can't
Anthony's
spend 15
a pusher.
minutes on every question.
He's a pusher.
I wouldn't do too much here. I think you have a pretty solid base tier lineup. I would not move Josh Allen because in a 1 QB league, the return you're going to get for him is not going to be beneficial to you. Where you have obviously your riches is at the running back position. I would take a look at seeing what you could get for Saquon or Gibson. I would hold on to Akers, but your running backs are your strength of your roster. But it's also, there's no reason to blow this thing up and go crazy. The bones to this roster are there. You definitely need some help at wide receiver. And in a dynasty league, carrying a couple of tight ends like that, there's nothing crazy about that at all. David Njoku probably falls off this year, could land in a different spot and give you a little bit of value there. But yeah, you need a couple of wide receivers. But like Brad said, the draft is deep and you have some running backs to trade, but don't trade Allen. Don't trade Waller. Don't trade those guys. Those are cornerstones of your roster right now. Stay the course. If all those guys were healthy this year, you'd be 7-2.
I don't
not with those wide receivers. I disagree with that last statement.
Okay.
Well, it depends on the starting requirements. Like if you can start,
if I can start three of those running backs every week.
Done.
If I can start 3 of those running backs every week with Josh Allen and Darren Waller, I'll take you and Brad as my wide receivers and I'll win most weeks.
I'm probably better than most of Detroit's receivers though. So I'll be honest. I'm pretty slow.
Not Amon-Ra though.
Out there on the he's so good.
Future Hall of Famer Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Fit him for a gold jacket,
family?
baby.
What's that family? What do they all have? Why do they have all wide receivers for kids and none of them are good?
Whoa. Amon-Ra is good though. He's good right. St. Brown.
I just like to push your buttons. He is pretty good.
Message me. I'd be happy to look at your league, see if I can think of any.
I bet you
trades.
would.
I'm really.
He's going to push some wood for you, Facebook user.
No, you don't push wood. That's bad. Pushing wood is bad. Pushing wood is bad.
Debatable.
Depends who you ask.
So I would have no problem if you want to try to move a couple of the smaller pieces. Knox, Hardman, Campbell, Rieger, Hamler. A couple of those things. If you're trying to maybe improve draft capital or maybe package them together to get you a receiver you love. But you don't have to. I'm guessing at 2 and 7, if you have all your picks, you're going to be one of the top picks in the draft. So just take the best receivers available, and then next year you go into the season with a really studly looking roster with a really nice rookie receiver. We know rookie receivers can pop in the right spot. Problem solved.
And just remember, at 2-7, the players that you trade away, players need them more than you do. So there's nothing wrong with carrying those guys into the offseason and into the draft season. And all of a sudden, people are banging down your door with draft picks now and high draft picks for those players. Doesn't hurt you at all at 2-7 to have Barkley and Gibson and Hunt in the offseason. Every other manager in your league wants those players. Let them come get them.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. So evaluate it, see if you can find a really good deal. But like I said, you don't have to push wood. That means be very conservative. You don't have to move pieces around the board.
Is there a bet to say pushing wood
means.
On this show? Like, are you guys got like a bet on this?
Because it's a really good example if you guys would just listen to what I'm saying.
I've never played chess before in my life. No, I'm just kidding. I actually was on the chess team when I was a younger person. I like chess before I got into sports. So I like
chess is a sport, Brad. Take it back.
Sweet heavens. I'm going to have to put the mute button on you in a minute here if you keep talking about chess. Listen, so I thought Cody's comment is really interesting. So do you guys think that Seattle would go after Rashad Penny 2.0 with Rojo here? Because it's basically a very similar style player, speedster who's okay at best.
It's really hard to know what Pete Carroll's going to do. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he could get a shot there. I think he could get a shot on a lot of spots. But do I think he's going to be relevant in the future? No, I don't. I was always low on Ronald Jones even in his rookie season. I was low on Keyshawn Vaughn. Similar player to me. I was off on both of them. So, could he?
They're quite different in terms of style.
The only thing they have in common is they both play football.
No.
Is the team they play for.
No, both of them catch the ball in the backfield pretty well. Both of them run between the tackles pretty well, but they just never had anything elite that separated them from everyone else.
I think Ronald Jones probably gets a look somewhere. It could be Seattle. It could be, who knows? It could be the CFL. It could be Europe. Who knows where he's going to go? At the end of the day, to Anthony's point, he doesn't have any special attributes to him. So wherever he goes, he's going to be in a backfield with a bunch of other running backs. If I had him on my roster, I'm not getting rid of him. You might as well hold on to Rojo now if you've had him this long. But I just don't see any reason to be excited for where he might land. Like, what's the best possible landing spot for Ronald Jones?
Arizona, if they get rid of the other guys?
Or Seattle, I guess, right? Seattle's a good one because Carson's probably close to done and the guys behind him are garbage. So
yeah, Seattle's one of those teams that I have no problem mocking a running back to in round, 2, 3, 4 and going, okay, this guy is.
Do they have those picks?
I don't think they've traded any draft picks, have they?
They don't have their first. They don't have their first.
Is that gone as well? I thought this year was the last year all their picks were, or some of their picks were gone.
They might have their second. Anyway, I just think that, that team might not have Russell Wilson next year either. So then all of a sudden it's poopy. So who knows?
Yeah, he could go somewhere like the Falcons, not really a lot of.
You mean Cordell Patterson's not their running back in the future?
So
yeah.
That offensive line is awful. So, yeah, it's so hard. Things change very quickly, though, right? A couple of free agents and a good draft pick, and all of a sudden, I have a good offensive line. Look at the lines; they went from a pretty yucky offensive line to one of the best pretty quickly.
Yeah, and with Taylor Decker come back, all of a sudden that running game just pops. I mean, Panay on one side,
it worked okay last week.
Yeah,
you guys ran like crazy last week.
We did. 130 out of DeAndre. Was solid. So
he's awesome.
All right.
We didn't talk about Dalvin Cook.
We did, yeah, just slightly. So I don't, I like Cook. I'm a big fan. He's in my top 10. Sully, this is your team. This is your boy. Talk about Cooks. Let Stebbs know.
Well, obviously, I'm wearing his freaking jersey. I kind of like him. I'm very concerned in terms of where he goes from here. On a real football note, I wish the Vikings didn't give him the contract that they gave him, but they did. And that's not a knock on the player. It's a knock on giving us a running back a second contract. We've seen Alexander Madison be 80% of Dalvin Cook when he gets 100% of the touches. So I don't have a problem with that. But as a fantasy asset, in Dynasty especially, I have him on a few rosters, and his seat's getting hot. I think it's time to, get out from Dalvin before I'm holding the bag like I did with Derrick Henry. And I don't know. I'm very confused. And I know it's my team. I watch him every week. He's dynamic. There's nothing on the field that he can't do. But there's just something about me that thinks that the end is coming sooner rather than later.
I don't know. I mean, I've not had many shares of Dalvin in his fantasy career or in his NFL career either. So it's hard for me to really have a side. I love the player, love the talent when he's on the field. One of the best.
Yeah.
He's 20. What is he, 26 going on 27, or is he already 27? I mean,
I think so. I can look here. He's 26 going on 27. Good job.
I tend to not hold on to running backs much past 26, 27, 28, just because you can easily go get others. They can be very attainable at the younger age.
You could just trade Cook for Michael Carter and you'd be happy.
I would. No, because I had Cook. Didn't I? I think I had Cook higher on my top 10.
Come on.
You have Cook at 4, Brad.
Oh yeah, so I definitely would be taking Cook over Carter in the vacuum that keeps going around.
I pulled up DLF's Dynasty running back rankings. They have Henry at 12.
Yeah.
Zeke's at 11. They have CEH and David Montgomery ahead of Cam Akers.
Not CEH, not even close.
What do you make of David Montgomery?
I could hear that conversation. I mean, I like Montgomery a lot, but I just
Me too.
I don't. Chicago just kind of left him out to dry for a little bit, but now I feel like he's RB1 conversation pretty easily, right?
Yeah, he's like
I would have thought.
He's just he's
He's
good.
better than Jacob. I think he's better than Josh Jacobs, personally.
Josh Jacobs needs to get out of Las Vegas.
Well, maybe that's not a fair statement. I think Chicago, if they do anything right, it's that they kind of use Montgomery the right way. Like he catches passes and runs the football. They don't throw the ball to Jacobs enough in Vegas, and I don't know why. But maybe they will now with Ingold gone down, and everybody hates
every other running back is hurt, so they gotta do something.
I think Jalen Richard got hurt in that game as well. So we'll see. Running backs are so hard to rank, especially up at the top, right?
It's really fluky too. Just one injury could just totally. I mean,
change it all.
3 weeks ago, we probably would have had Derrick Henry in all of us would have probably had him at 10. I mean, at least in the conversation. But now 3 weeks later,
if he was still healthy and running for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns a week, like he was before his injury, it'd probably be 8 to 10 for me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and so maybe Brad wouldn't have done that, but
no, probably not.
Yeah,
Brad's a bit of a hater.
I'm very much further out on him than Sully was because I traded him before Sully mentioned it. So,
but see, my whole thing was to sell him, but it wasn't to give him away, right? Like I was never disputing that Derrick Henry wasn't a talent. My point is that he held so much value that it's time to get out from underneath him. And I didn't even take my own advice. I missed the bus in 2 spots. I still have one in our Superflex league there, Brad. I think you traded him to us actually. He's on our roster and sitting there doing nothing. And in my other league, like I said, I traded him and Robert Woods for a broken finger Elijah Mitchell and Mike Evans. That's what I got. When I was hoping to get like 3 firsts and your firstborn and your company car and a new cell phone for him, but I didn't. Wow. So what are you going to do?
I don't know that I've ever gotten that much for him either, but
Hey, I'm the same guy that like tells people to give me more when they send me trade offers. So, I'm telling them you need to take more from me. So.
Well, that's it, folks. Running backs are in the books. Hopefully it helped you. Hopefully it didn't cause more questions. But if it did, we're here to help. Drop comments on the videos after the fact because this thing will be on YouTube forever. Make sure you go to Discord. Make sure you hit us up. Feel free to DM Anthony all you want because he wants to help you out.
I do.
And don't forget, come back tomorrow night. We'll be doing the redraft show. And then Sunday, we've got the Boomer Bust show to help you with your lineups. The tier maker videos are here to get you with your week 11 tiers. We already got the wide receiver one up. The rest will be coming, and we'll see you guys later.
Good night.
Peace.